One of the most shocking storylines of the season has been the rise of TCU football. There have been plenty of teams who have come out of nowhere and plenty of teams who have disappointed, but the Horned Frogs have been a pleasant surprise. After Gary Patterson brought the TCU football program into the mainstream and made everyone fall in love with them, he started to fall off by the end of his coaching career, leading to a coaching change. They decided to hire their arch rival's head coach, and so far, he has done a tremendous job. The Horned Frogs are undefeated, they have some big wins, a great offense, and they're off to their best start since 2017. The Frogs have legitimate Big 12 title hopes, and in today's video, we're going to talk about this year's team, how they got to this point, my thoughts for the season, and the overall rise of the Frogs. But before we get into it, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, so quickly be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's get started and talk about the impossible rise of TCU football. Going back in time, the TCU football program was started in 1896. The team went 1-1-1. They'd have their first big season in 1920 as they'd end up going 9-1, losing in the Fort Worth Classic. Later on in the 1920s, they'd have two undefeated seasons under head coach Francis Schmidt, and then they'd have another one in 1938. Why does this matter? Well, because they went nearly 80 years before they would have another. Gary Patterson would arrive at TCU in 2001 as he would take over a TCU program that had most recently left the WAC. The Horned Frogs were now in Conference USA, and Patterson was a relative unknown at the time. In his first year, the team would go 6-6, where they'd end up losing in the GalleryFurniture.com Bowl. What a weird bowl game that was, but the next year, Patterson showed what his teams would be made of. He went 10-2, where they finished first in the conference, were ranked, and won the Liberty Bowl. He would back that up with an 11-win season in 2003, and after one down year, they would head over to the Mountain West. They would join that conference in 2005, and the Frogs had an unbelievable season. They'd go 11-1, and would finish the year ranked as high as number 9 in the country. Throughout the next 4 years, TCU would win 4 straight bowl games, having 3 11-plus win seasons. 2009, though, is when they would really start to take off. Led by quarterback Andy Dalton, Patterson's Horned Frogs broke out as the team went 12-1, were ranked as high as number 6, and eventually lost to number 6 Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. 2010 was even better though. Once again led by Dalton, the team would go 13-0, were ranked number 2 in the country, and ended up beating Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. It was extremely unfair because TCU was arguably the best team in the country, but they were not going to get a chance at the national championship because of the BCS system. In 2011, the team would go 11-2, where they'd end up winning the Poinsettia Bowl. Patterson would make a bowl game in 10 of his 11 first seasons, and now they would transition into the Big 12 Conference. After losing Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri, and Texas A&M, the Big 12 decided to expand and added both TCU and West Virginia. 2012, though, was a little bit rough for them. The team ended up going 7-6, where they would lose in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. In 2013, they'd go 4-8, but they had discovered their new quarterback, and his name was Trevon Boykin. He was a converted athlete to quarterback, and he had a lot of growing pains. Except 2014 would be his breakout season. He became a Heisman contender, the Frogs went 12-1, and they finished as high as ranked number 3rd in the country. They got screwed out of the college football playoff, and to this day, it remains as a controversy. There was no reason why they should have been left out, but they put a bigger brand in Ohio State in, who ended up winning, so I guess you can't complain that much. In 2015, the Frogs had a ton of hype once again, but Boykin would get hurt in the middle of the season, and they'd lose a crucial game to Oklahoma, and the team would end up going 11-2. 2016, they would fall off, but 2017, they would bounce back. Led by Texas A&M transfer Kenny Hill, the team got off to an undefeated start, but they eventually got upset by Iowa State, and ended up finishing the year at 11-3. Ever since the 2017 season though, Patterson had begun to lose his touch. The Sean Robinson experiment failed, and the team went 7-6 in 2018, then they went 5-7 in 2019, and 6-4 in 2020. Last year, the Frogs were off to a bad start, and they decided to fire Patterson midway through the season. At times, Patterson had been controversial in the news, but for the most part, he was an excellent coach, will be in the Hall of Fame, and brought TCU to where they are today. But it was time for them to move in a new direction, and they wanted a guy who could make things fun. They decided to spice up the offense and bring in Sonny Dykes. He had most recently been the coach at SMU, and the Mustangs were known for having a high-flying offense, and he had turned around that dead program and made them relevant. This was obviously their arch rival, so taking that coach away was going to leave some bad blood between the two. Either way though, Dykes seemed to be the right guy for the job, but no one expected TCU to be all that great in year one. Going into the 2022 season, many expected TCU to finish near the bottom of the Big 12. They had a quarterback battle, they lost Zach Evans, and no one knew what the defense was going to look like. The quarterback battle would come down to experienced starter Max Duggan and Chandler Morris. Chandler was a big-time recruit coming out of high school and is actually the son of Chad Morris and would transfer from Oklahoma to TCU, and he had a breakout game last year against Baylor, and that's why many expected him to be the starter. He'd play in their first game, but he'd eventually get hurt, giving Duggan a second chance. He had underperformed in his time at TCU so far, but now he's made up for it. He's thrown for 1,305 yards with 14 touchdowns and only 1 interception. He's also been a factor on the ground, and Duggan is an experienced player, is putting up big stats, and could be playing his way into both the Heisman and NFL scene if he continues this work. Because Chandler was hurt, he's now the backup, but he's definitely the guy for the future. At running back, they obviously lost Zach Evans to Ole Miss, and that was a big blow. He was a 5-star from the 2020 class, but luckily they've had a couple of guys step up. Amare Demercado and Amani Bailey have all stepped up at running back, with them combining for nearly 800 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground. Duggan has also been a factor there, so not only do they have a good quarterback, but they have a balanced running game, and they also have a superstar at wide receiver. His name is Quentin Johnston. He was a big-time top 100 player in the class of 2020, and after a great first 2 years, he just most recently won Player of the Week, as he has 26 catches for 320 yards so far this season. While he probably needs to start scoring more touchdowns, Johnston has the perfect size and the perfect physical traits to become a first-round pick. They also have Tay Barber, Darius Davis, Gunnar Henderson, Savion Williams, and Jordan Hudson. So overall, they're just very balanced. But would it actually turn to wins? That was the big question mark. And in week 1, they went on the road to play against Colorado. They win this game easily, destroying the Buffaloes 38-13. In week 2, they come home and play against Tarleton State, and then they'd have week 3 off. Yes, the team was 2-0, but they hadn't really beaten anybody. In week 3, in their rivalry game against SMU, the Mustangs had a sold-out crowd, but TCU pretty much controlled the game from start to finish, and despite it being a one-score game, TCU was the better team all night and won 42-34. The team was now 3-0, and they were slowly starting to gain more respect. Their big test was going to come the following week against Oklahoma, and Sonny Dykes had this to say before the game. Quote, "Oklahoma is coming for blood following their loss, and we have to be ready to fight, and we're definitely going to come out and match their energy." Well, you could say they did that. Against the number 18 ranked Sooners, they got off to a hot start and ended up taking the Oklahoma defense to the woodshed. They won 55-24, Max Duggan was insane, and they gave the TCU crowd a lot to cheer for. The team jumped into the top 25, but things were not going to get any easier. They'd have to go on the road to Kansas before they'd have to come home and play against both Oklahoma State and Kansas State, both of which were ranked. As College Game Day came for the Battle of the Unbeatens, TCU would go on the road and control the game from start to finish. While Jalen Daniels was hurt and Kansas did make a comeback, TCU was ahead the entire game and ended up winning 38-31 after a late stop. The Horned Frogs are now 5-0 with a 2-0 mark in the Big 12, have 3 good wins to their resume, and it looks like they're a legitimate Big 12 contender. But as I said, the schedule is extremely difficult. The Big 12 is definitely having one of its better seasons in recent memory, and in their next 2 weeks, they play against both Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Both these teams are ranked, and luckily, it'll come at home. After that, they go on the road to West Virginia before they return home against Texas Tech. To finish the season, they get number 22 Texas and Baylor on the road before their final home game against Iowa State. When I take a look at that schedule, it is pretty grueling. I think they're going to split the Oklahoma State and Kansas State games. They should beat both West Virginia and Texas Tech, and I also think they're going to beat Iowa State. I think they're going to split the Texas and Baylor games, which would leave them at a 10-2 record. I don't claim to be an expert here, but I don't think TCU is going to finish the season undefeated. While it would be a spectacular story, I just don't think it's going to happen with how loaded this conference is, and they're bound to slip up at some point. Either way, Sonny Dykes is definitely a candidate for Coach of the Year. The Horned Frogs are headed in a good direction, and it's been really cool to see how this has all happened. I look forward to watching TCU for the remainder of the season and seeing what happens to this program in the future. But what do you guys think? If you're a TCU fan, what are your expectations for this team, and how have you guys gotten so good? What's your projected record, and what team or program should I take a look at in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support the channel, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.